Hello and welcome back to the Loyal Sons Show. That's at the Loyal Sons on all of your social media. Follow us here and follow us there for Pitt sports content you will not want to miss. If you love Victory Chili and hate West Virginia, this is the place for you. The Loyal Sons Show, a safe, sunshiny place for your Pitt Athletics fix. Gentlemen, it is Monday, September 9th at 5:20 p.m. And it would appear that Pitt has had a very interesting weekend.
Yeah, I'd say. Interesting is a good word to describe it.
We did not need any more content leading into West Virginia week, but here we are with quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah, God, where to even begin? The football team, of course, had its biggest comeback in 50 years.
Yep, 1971, since 1971.
Our
Much
athletic
before we
director,
were born.
Our athletic director got fired this morning.
Relieved of her duties.
And the volleyball team's number one in the country. Meanwhile, Colorado lost. Penn State almost lost to Bowling Green, and Notre Dame did very much lose to Northern Illinois. It's almost too much. So how do we want to dissect it? What do we want to talk about first?
Do we just want to get our obligatory AP pool bitching out of the way early? We don't need to spend a whole lot of time on it. I only really have one major gripe. I mean, the AP pool is what it is, but Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois on Saturday at home, and they are currently ranked number 18 in the country. 7 spots ahead of said Northern Illinois team who beat them on their home turf.
You have to understand, for me as a MAC guy, this is a very worth it trade-off, because they decided to go the route of maybe Northern Illinois is good. Let's rank the MAC team. And now, as it stands, if the season ends today, there's a MAC team in the college football playoff. So you know what? I'll wear Notre Dame as number 18. I do not care.
Put Northern Illinois at 18 for all I care. Drop Notre Dame to 25. But a 1-1 team ranked 7 spots ahead of a 2-0 team who they just lost to. Hey, as long as there's a number next to their name while they play the games on NBC, that's all that matters.
Didn't Clemson drop to 25 after losing to Georgia?
They sure did.
Yeah. Consistency. You love to see it in the polls.
We love to bitch about the AP, and it's stupid. But I don't know. It doesn't have the same juice as it used to now that there's an actual group of intelligent stakeholders that decide the rankings that matter. Now it just kind of feels like they're doing shit for attention. I don't know. I don't care about the AP.
Yeah, come week 7 or 8, whenever that first college football playoff poll comes out, it suddenly is just disappears into thin air. But it's not going to stop me from reading it and then having a gut reaction to it. But that's plenty of time on that. We can move on.
That's more time spent talking about Notre Dame than they deserve after, again, what has been just an insane 48 hours for the University of Pittsburgh.
Football game? Do we want to go football game?
Yeah, football game.
David, you were there. You were the one of the 3 sons who made the trip.
Yes. Yeah. So, just a quick stadium review. It is exactly what Pitt should have. It is it's a very quaint 40,000 person stadium tucked beautifully right into the middle of campus. Now listen, I'd hope that whoever our next athletic director is does it right. And by that, I mean like seats with backs to them and not bleachers, and more than like 2 bathrooms in the stadium. But like it's the perfect setup for a Cincinnati or a Pittsburgh. And frankly, just speaking to the experience, that was the most miserable football game I've ever watched for 2.5 quarters. To the extent that like there was no trash talk the entire game. I was also on my best behavior because I was with my fiance, her cousin, and her cousin's boyfriend. And so I was the only one who like really genuinely cared about the outcome of the game. And I was not about to get into fights in my like entirely Cincy only section. But it was just pretty cordial because like they went up on us so hard. There was nothing we were doing to even participate in the game. Pitt was not participants in that football game. And then it didn't dawn on anyone that Pitt had a chance to win this football game until Kenny Johnson caught that long ball to set up the Ben Sauls field goal. Like it didn't even cross, even as we were coming back, just didn't cross anybody's mind that this game was in peril.
Montfield, but yeah.
Who'd I say?
Kenny Johnson, who had 0 catches.
Yeah, was he out?
Just days after I predicted he would have a Jordan Addison-esque sophomore season. So
did he? I don't remember seeing.
Yes,
he played.
Had the long kick return that got. I believe there was a hold on that one as well. Very much played. They targeted him early on. Looked like they were trying to get him involved early. Just did not catch a pass.
It was during the stretch of the game where we could not complete a pass.
Oh, so most of the game?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah.
So, yeah, let's start with that bad part, the couldn't complete a pass part. How bad were you guys having flashbacks sitting at home watching that game?
So I don't think it was as bad because there were open guys. The offense seemed to be kind of working. It was just he missed that guy really badly, or why did he throw it there, or the timing was way off. Last year nothing was working. We looked like the village idiots. So we at least had that like in our back pockets, but after it went on for more than a couple of drives, it was like something needs to change. I don't know if it was pulling the quarterback like maybe some of us thought, or we need to snap out of it like fast.
I want to mention our good friend Noah Hiles sent us a text, and it quite literally, like, I actually saw the Eli Holstein interception he threw in the end zone on that first drive a few seconds before his text came through to us. And I'm like, he said, "Is Eli Holstein good?" or something along those lines. He looks good. And I replied thinking he was being sarcastic. Like, did you intentionally wait for him to throw a pick to say that to us? And he was like, I swear that happened seconds after I sent this text. Because I agreed, like Pitt was going down the field on that first drive. I was like, all right, we're picking up right where we left off the Kent State game, making some plays. Holstein got out of the pocket a couple times, made things happen. And then he threw a pick. And then it seemed like for the next 2-ish quarters, we couldn't do anything. There was a play, the third and short play, I believe it was still in the first quarter, where Poppy Williams beat his guy off the line. Would have been an easy pitch and catch touchdown, but Eli Holstein underthrew it. And yeah, I'll be honest, we were calling for Nate Yarnell early in the season. This was the first time that we've officially gone to the well and said, bring in the sheriff, bring in Nate Yarnell. And I don't know. I felt pretty justified at the time. I was like, we saw him play against Kent State. Great. Holstein played great against Kent State, but we're playing a Power 4 opponent and he can't hit anyone. He overthrew a few guys, even on that first drive when they were driving, some guys who had some space. And it looked like, the moment has got to him. He's playing a real team. Maybe this isn't the guy we thought he was. So, apologies in place. I mean, we'll get to the good part, but I think this might be a recurring theme for us.
Yeah. I want to apologize to you two because maybe you guys were talking about it at Dylan's place. Like, all right, let's see Yarny. I was dumb enough to tweet it. That one was on me. Um,
I might have let one rip. I was ready to bench him.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better because Squid was giving me shit after the game for tweeting it. I didn't realize that I wasn't alone. But no, where I was coming from on that, and where I'm sure you were, Dylan. I mean, he's still the guy. He's still the future. He still is very clearly talented. But what was going on the first 2.5 quarters was clearly a case of the jitters. Like he was so in his head, he couldn't hit an open guy on a slant route. He couldn't throw a screen. Like this was just clearly a case of I am a redshirt freshman playing in my first away game. And maybe we were a little bit snake bit because we saw somebody else clearly have a case of the yips against Cincinnati, and it cost us a game because we started so far from behind. But I just thought at this point, your chances of getting to 6 games in a bowl game goes down significantly if you lose to Cincinnati. Just put Yarnell in, stop the bleeding, and then sit down Holstein on Monday and say, "Hey, you're still our guy. We still think you're great. That just can't happen again. Okay, good buddy. Get back in there."
You're telling me that if we bench Eli Holstein after 6 quarters, you can look him in the eye and say, "Oh, you're still our guy. We just pulled the plug on you after 2 quarters of bad play." By the time I was ready to pull Holstein, I thought the game was already lost. So I was like, Holstein is not doing it. It was probably in the 3rd quarter. And I'm like, this game's over. So you might as well just fuck it. Just let it ride out. But I was thinking about when is the time to mix Yarnell in? Is it the 4th quarter? Do we start him for West Virginia? Do we let Holstein try again in West Virginia and then put Yarnell in? Because it is different. Last year we saw Phil was bad, and that was it. We had 1 year of Phil, and he sucked. You can kick him to the curb. Holstein, he's a delicate redshirt freshman. If you play this wrong, you can just ruin it all. So you got to be a little bit careful. I was thinking about how do we best roll out Yarnell? Is it now, later? How long do you wait versus like risking costing yourself games? Because it is different than last year.
So I felt with the Yarnell thing, I just felt like we were so flat after the first couple offensive drives of the second half that it was like, we need someone to give us a spark. Like maybe Yarnell can come in and complete a few passes and then get the sideline back into it. Clearly that wasn't an issue because this team rallied really well. Pat Narduzzi mentioned in his presser today that he was raving about how locked in and how engaged the sideline was the whole game. He said he was looking at guys, and sometimes you can see guys and be like, yeah, they're defeated. We can't win this one. But he said he never felt like those guys didn't think they could win the game. Could that be a bunch of coach speak? Maybe. But from me watching on TV, I'm like, well, they need a spark somewhere. And just so happened that spark was Eli Holstein and a heavy dose of Desmond Reed.
Yeah, we're sitting here arguing still when and why we would have pulled Holstein. Meanwhile, the guy went on and won us the game. So I don't know if I should be giving Narduzzi credit for sticking with his guy and believing in him, because I could just be giving him credit for the same stubbornness that kept Dracovic in for 3 games longer than he should have. And that's where I was coming from. I was hoping, all right, maybe you learned, and when a guy clearly doesn't have it that day and you have a decent replacement, you put him in. But either way,
we were snake bitten.
We were snake bit. Narduzzi made the right choice. So what I think the overarching takeaway that Pitt fans should take away from this game is the the pitfalls and the positives of going mega warp speed. So we saw a tale of two halves. The first half, I kept thinking Coach Narduzzi probably wants to strangle Cade Bell to death because they are going 3 and out in 10 seconds. And then Cincinnati is just sitting on us. The time of possession was 2-1 in the first half. It felt like we didn't have the ball for longer than 5 minutes. And they were taking their time, running the clock, pounding the ball. I mean, just 7-8 minute drives, and Pitt never touched the ball. And all of a sudden we're down 27-6.
And that's part of the reason why I thought it was a lost cause. And like we said, the offense was flat, but the defense came out just as bad. There was no, I don't think there was a, did anyone think our defense would turn around after what we saw? They were running it for 8 yards a carry. They were targeting both of our corners, not just started off. Rashad Battle didn't look too good. Neither corner looked very good. They were doing whatever they wanted. And even if we did switch to Yarnell and he lit the world on fire, I thought we are in too big of a hole to even catch up.
If there was ever a game where I was sitting there in the third quarter, I was like, yeah, there is zero chance we win this game, which shows how much I know. But it felt like, okay, nothing has gone right. They still have all the momentum. I would say the one, honestly, just in hindsight, bright spot was that since he didn't capitalize on a few of those possessions, had to settle for field goals, missed a short field goal. It was like, okay, we're bending but not breaking, but offense isn't doing anything, so this really won't matter.
Well, I was getting mad. The announcers were saying, well, if Pitt can do something here, they have some momentum, and they got that field goal at the end of the half. And you're like, oh, you feel a lot better after getting 3 right there. I was like, well, yeah, but still, we're not going to turn it around. This is over.
I think at one point I said we're a stop away from me feeling really good here. And one of our buddies said, yeah, I'm $1 million parlay away from being a millionaire. Something like that. Really good line off the top. But I was like, yeah, you know what? You're probably right.
It got to the point where, and this was the drive where since he kicked a field goal to go up 27-6, my fiance asked if we could leave yet. And I said, if they go up 4 scores. So if they score a touchdown on this drive, we're leaving.
Good thing they didn't.
And
so
am I alone? That is the point we got to.
Am I alone in thinking that the only glimmer of hope was that the offense looked all right, Holstein just looked bad? Like, guys were there.
The play calling I never questioned at any point.
One thing that went through my mind, a lot of times you can make excuses for bad teams, like, oh, if we didn't get called for that holding, or if we make this tackle short of the sticks and get off the field on 3rd down, or if we don't underthrow that guy, we're right in it. You can make excuses for bad teams and say, yeah, you missed some opportunities, but good teams don't make that many mistakes. And that's the camp that I was in. I was in the camp of we are missing opportunities because we are not that good. We're not playing good right now. Holstein missed way too many guys for me to be making excuses for the offense, but there were guys there, and we were moving the ball. Desmond Reed did look pretty good running the ball in the first half still.
Yeah, he's unbelievable, and we will, I'm sure, talk at length about that fact. But I mean, no, you're right, Squid. And maybe we should have wised up that there was a chance we could turn around because the play calling was good and guys were insanely open. I'm sure you guys saw a little bit of it on TV, but having the full, like, all 22, I couldn't believe how open some of our receivers were. And Holstein would just take the snap, look up, be a little bit afraid, have that little bug in the back of his head that he didn't want to throw a ball 15 yards downfield, and then run for his life in circles, which he did impressively effectively. But you would have been shocked to see some of the guys running open in that game. So in hindsight, all it took was one guy to figure it out for us to be back in that game. And
he sure did.
Boy, did he figure it out.
Fourth quarter for Eli Holstein, 11 for 12, 189 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, if that's not a growing up in front of our eyes moment, I don't know what it is. I'm sure we'll see more youth from him. We'll see some rookie mistakes, but wow, that was night and day.
I thought the best case scenario was he has like a stat line half of that. We still lose, but we at least have a little bit of confidence in him going into West Virginia. We can say, well, the first 2 quarters of Cincy were bad, but everything else was good, and we just got to get off to a better start. Did not expect a near perfect stat line and a 2-minute drill to get into field goal range.
I feel like we're a little contained right now, like being 2 days removed from the game at this point, but that was ridiculous. That was the biggest comeback we've seen in our lives as Pitt football fans. I mean, anyone who's under the age of 50 has never seen a comeback like that. I remember thinking in my head right when the game ended, or I guess approaching the end of the game, like, this is not a game that Pitt wins. I've never seen us win a game like this and come back. And that's because we literally have never seen it happen. That was, I mean, this is a game I'm going to remember for a very long time. Now, depending on how the rest of the season plays out, we'll kind of gauge how long I remember this game, but that was just a absolutely ludicrous comeback.
And that's the flip side of that mega warp speed offense. They scored 22 points in what? 18 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Like comfortably. Like had the ball in position to win the game and had to take a couple minutes off the clock so Cincy wouldn't have anything left.
And they did it to perfection.
Yes.
That go-ahead touchdown coming from Desmond Reed, I believe he topped out at like 21 miles per hour. I saw a tweet showing like the fastest players from college football this weekend. I think we need to do more than just the passing over. Desmond Reed had a great game. He had a historically good game on Saturday.
Yeah.
254 yards of total offense. He went for 100 yards rushing and 100 receiving. This dude is leading the country in all-purpose yards right now. Pitt brought in Cade Bell, and Cade Bell just so happened to just bring our best player with him. A guy that we talked about just about all offseason about he would be too small and couldn't play in this offense. It's flat out disrespectful that we reduced him to just Vinny Davis 2.0. This dude is one of the most electric playmakers we've seen in a Pitt offense. I mean, obviously there's a bunch of those guys, but I mean, legitimately one of the best playmakers we've had in a decade.
A lot of people are going to talk about his speed. And, you know, when you're fast enough, I guess it doesn't matter if you're tiny. Just ask D'Anthony Thomas. Just ask, I don't want to give him credit, but why am I blanking on Tavon Austin's name? Like, if you're fast, you can sort of just make things happen. But his balance is ridiculous. He will wear a 250-pound dude off the chest, bounce back 5 yards because, you know, gravity and inertia, and stay on his feet and keep going.
He's awesome.
He's a magician.
Yeah. Yeah, he's legitimately like skyrocketed rankings of most fun Pitt players of our lifetime already. I'll be interested to see how he holds up. It seemed like every time he got tackled on Saturday, someone was having to peel him off the turf and he went back to the huddle. But then we're in the fourth quarter. He's taken 20 hits at this point, and he takes a 5-yard pass and goes 60 yards. I mean, that was, I think I incorrectly called that the game-winning touchdown earlier, but the last touchdown we scored. I mean, the dude's unreal, and knock on every piece of wood you can find that he can stay healthy, because it sure seems like they plan to make him the focal point of the offense moving forward.
Yeah, we're gonna need to see like a Jules Goff recovery and then profile takeoff, because I mean, you said it. He looks banged up anytime he gets hit, And when you get 20 plus touches a game, that happens. When you're 5'7", 160, that happens. When you run 40 yards every time you touch the ball, just from scampering around, you're going to get winded. And I'm sorry, Derek Davis is not thus far doing it for me.
8 carries for 20 yards on the year so far. I really hope he can show a flash of something else. I know we said on his first carry in week 1, got called back on a hold, but I think, David, you called him. You said he looked like the Terminator. We need to see more of that because, yeah, like you said, I don't think it can be Desmond Reed and Desmond Reed only for the rest of the year.
Absolutely not. Where was Dan Carter on Saturday? Because I wouldn't mind. He runs well enough that I'm getting to the point where I'm ready to say, okay, all of Derek Davis's carries can be Dan Carter carries if Goff is hurt. If who's the redshirt freshman?
Montrevious Lloyd.
If they aren't seeing enough from Montrevious Lloyd, whatever, just Dan Carter can be the running back too, but somebody has to emerge. And maybe it's early in the season to be saying that, but I think we all see what we have in our running back 1 and what would happen if something were to happen.
It would be terrible if we had another good running back on the roster.
Awful.
Who was eligible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little shame there.
Can we touch on a certain decision that I think if the result had ended up being different, maybe if Ben Sauls had missed that final kick, that I think probably would have let off this show and we would have talked about and argued about for 20, 30 minutes. Going for 2, down 8. Down 8? Yeah. Analytics guys versus football guys. I mean, where do we stand here? What do you guys think? How did you feel in the moment?
I think it comes down to how much do you trust your team. Pitt cut the lead. The offense was figuring things out. If you have a good play call, I think you go for it. It is so worth it. And I support the analytics. And Cade Bell had a great play call, the little fake run pop pass. It just was a step off. Yeah, the play was there. And if we make that, we don't need a game-winning field goal.
Can you guys tell me what happened on that? Because it was the opposite. I was in one end zone and it was in the opposite end zone. And then I just couldn't see the Jumbotron. It looked to me like Kenny Johnson, if he had gone up with 2 hands or out with 2 hands, could have easily brought that in. Was my mind playing tricks on me?
It was weird. It was hard to tell if Holstein put a little too much zip on the ball or if Kenny Johnson pulled up a little bit and then at the dive, there was just a disconnect on. I don't know if
everything's easy. Everything's easy to say when you get to watch a replay in slow motion, but I will say it did look like Kenny Johnson kind of slowed up out of his break for some reason, and that if he would have not have done that, it would have just hit him in the chest. Also felt like putting a second hand out there, he could have corralled it and made a play on it. But like you said, everything happened so quick. It maybe Holstein put a little too much zip on it, but either way you spin it,
should have worked.
The play was there. Cade Bell had a good 2-point conversion play. And once again, this is the people arguing about, they shouldn't have gone for it. And like Swid said, I think if you have a really good play, which they clearly did, they had a play that they thought would work, and it would have worked if the players would have executed. Now, the counter to that is momentum, this, that, but it was there.
The numbers say you do it. If you have a play caller like Cade Bell, you feel more confident doing it. And by the way, he is already top of the charts in terms of folk hero status in Pittsburgh after 2 weeks. But Holstein looked too shook to me to put that important of a play in his hands. And he
at that point
came up short twice in a row.
He got us down there twice by that point.
I I would argue, and I'm not going to feel good arguing it, that even when Holstein was playing much better, there were still like decisions he was, and he went 10 for 11, so we're splitting hairs there. There were still guys running wide open that he tucked the ball instead and ran, or scrambled around until he found someone in the more intermediate. He still, even as we were coming back, didn't look like he was trusting himself, and he ended up being a hero when needed. But the numbers say you go for it. The numbers say you go for it. I feel like very rarely does it actually work in the way the numbers indicate it should. Just watching football since that little bit of analytics became popular, I just haven't seen it work. I don't know.
I will say, if Pitt would have lost the game, I'd probably be on here saying that it was stupid. So there's that.
I mean, it literally didn't work.
Right. Well, yeah. I would be on here beating the drum about it as opposed to saying like, actually, Cade Bell had a good play call.
Well, no. And if you look at it, Pitt went 0 for 2 and still won. It was...
That's because of the mega warp speed.
Take that for
as data. Wrong as possible, and it still worked out. So if you look at like how often... I don't know, just look at the numbers. They're right. Cade Bell's got them right. You're going to doubt Cade Bell now?
Well, how about this, David? Narduzzi said he didn't like it when it happened, but the numbers say to do it, and Cade wanted to go with it. He said that in the either post-game presser or today's presser.
So all right, I'm warming up to it. I'm warming up to it.
So you were more like Narduzzi than Cade Bell.
If it was our very young, trendy offensive coordinator twisting the arm of our curmudgeon-y, resistant to change head coach, then I'm much more willing to accept it. But I mean, like I said, numbers. I'm just glad that we don't have to worry about it.
Me too. Can we also just name a few of our favorite Cade Bell plays from Saturday? How about opening the game with just a shovel pass to Bart?
That was gorgeous.
There was
just a good old fashioned.
It didn't really do much, but he motioned
Kenny Johnson. I know exactly where Kenny Johnson into the backfield.
Yeah. Kenny Johnson motioned to the backfield, and Holstein stepped over.
Took the direct snap. Kenny got 4 yards. I think it went for a first down, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in hindsight, I don't know how I forgot that Kenny Johnson played in this game, but that one was sick. I mean, just the Desmond Reed play. He ran a halfback angle to perfection, cleared out the middle, had everyone on the right just run go routes. So he's coming across the middle, and there's just no one there if he beats the first linebacker to confront him, which you're Desmond Reed with a full head of steam.
I love,
and this is the open field. I love Desmond Reed.
I love Desmond Reed, and I love Desmond Reed's interviews because he just always speaks very like matter of factly. Like when they asked him, like when that play was going on, did you feel like you could score there? And he was like, "Oh yeah, when he called it, I knew I was going to score." He was like, "I knew I'd have one-on-one with the linebacker, and I knew he couldn't tackle me, so I knew I was going to score." And he said something similar in the Kent State game, like, "Oh, did you know?" He was like, "Oh yeah, as soon as Cade called the play, like I saw the hole open up, I knew I'd be one-on-one with the safety, and I knew I was going to score." He just always knows that if Cade calls the right plays, he's just going to score.
I think another one is the catch by Mumfield that got us into scoring position, because I was freaking out during that play, screaming my head off because I think I saw Mumfield a cool 3 count before Holstein did. And he was so open, it didn't matter that it took Holstein like 3 Mississippi to see him. Now, it could have been a touchdown, and it didn't dawn on me that we were in field goal range, so I was just freaking out because it could have been a touchdown and wasn't. But, I mean, how do you scheme your receiver one that open in a do-or-die play?
Well, similarly, we had a Mark Whipple special. We had a what was it? A 38-yard touchdown on 4th and 3 to Mumfield. That was a good
Wide
blast
open.
from the blast from the past. The old Pickett to Addison play.
He's awesome.
He is
At
awesome.
that point, that was a do or die play. If we don't get that, we think, oh, it's over now. We got to score on this drive. We're down ton. It's the fourth quarter. But I was not expecting a touchdown. And then in your brain, you're like, well, wait a second. There's this much time left. We're now down only this. Hold on a second. It isn't over. It was a quick momentum shifter.
Shout out to Kanade Mumfield. Career game, 5 for 123 and 2 touchdowns. Coming off a week 1 that was pretty forgettable. Dropped a touchdown. Obviously had the fumble on the punt return.
Oh, no, it was memorable.
Forgettable.
You like to forget it.
Yeah, like to forget it. Very memorable. Shout out to him, man. That's a captain and stepping up. And I mean, they don't win that game Saturday without Mumfield. So way to rebound there. And all these other things that happened kind of overshadowed, but he had the best game of his career.
Final star of the game. Before we move on to other news, we must touch on my background of the day, Ben Sauls.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect yet again. Clutch one. Long one. Dude's
Another
money.
long one.
He is going to be kicking on Sundays. That, what was it? Was it a 57-yarder? 53-yarder. Yeah, I saw an advanced metric on that. That 53-yarder was actually good from 1 million yards.
At least
1 million yards. 3 million feet. He clears it.
Hell of a homecoming for Ben Sauls.
Absolutely. And you see he hit the little UC on him when he hit, just like not even where he was standing. He walked through where Cincy's line was to the student section and hit him with one. I love that. I love a cocky kicker.
Also, Javon McIntyre stealing the game ball from the UC equipment managers and them chasing him around the field. I think Chris Carter tweeted out that video.
That was so weird.
So I'd be remiss if we didn't just do a really quick rundown of a few things that worried us, because I have a question at the end of this. So,
okay.
So the defense looked quite bad for a couple quarters, and those corners are going to get picked on.
I think they need to find. Sorry, Squid, go ahead.
I think being up by so much helped us because Cincinnati got conservative and was running the ball, and they were running it with enough success to where they would keep doing it. Probably could have just kept throwing at our corners all day and ran up the score. They sat on their hands a little bit.
I was going to say,
I think you're right. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think they either need to try someone new or Rashad Battle needs to fit Foe very, very quickly. Rylan Gandy got beat for a deep touchdown as well, but I still feel like I've seen enough from him to think that he can figure things out. But we're going on, what is this, year 4 or 5 Rashad Battle, and I haven't seen much at all.
And he's getting picked on.
Yeah, and he's getting picked on fairly consistently. I mean, there was one drive where I think they just went down the field strictly throwing at him. So that needs to get figured out. I feel like Timon Lynham has made some plays, and in the situations we've seen him, I don't know if he's pushing to pass Battle on the depth chart, but yeah, that's got to get cleaned up.
I worry about that because I don't know how Garrett Green stacks up against Sorsby as a passer. Kiner was a great running back. West Virginia's got 2 pretty good running backs. I don't want it to be more of the same next week, and you can't get off to slow starts. You can't let teams throw all over you.
They're not doing a good job of making
something.
They didn't make Cincy one-dimensional either, because Corey Kiner looked like prime Emmitt Smith on Saturday. So there's definitely some concerns there. Corey Kiner, hell of a running back, but I mean, CJ Donaldson, coming down the lane and seeing how many times defenders bounced off Corey Kiner on Saturday, C.J. Donaldson might look like Derrick Henry.
Tackling's a problem. Getting pressure with 4 is a problem. It's a repeat of last year and the year before, where you kind of have to run something a little exotic with the linebackers to get pressure. We haven't gotten pressure with 4 since 2021. That's something that is cause for concern. But on the other hand, as Coach Narduzzi pointed out, once the offense started going, the defense was able to feed off of that. They weren't on the field for 30 minutes of real time, because every commercial break for ESPN2 is half an hour. And they were able to get some rest and recuperate on the sidelines, but we saw enough. You're happy you got the win, but I think we saw enough to have reasonable concerns going into West Virginia. So I pose this question to you guys. Looking forward, do you think this game represented a turning point, a coming out party of sorts? Or should we be coming back down to earth with our expectations because of Holstein's hesitation to push the ball downfield, because of our secondary, because of our tackling?
I would say it's very promising that the team was able to respond the way they did in the second half. But, and there's always a but, I don't think the Cincinnati team is any good, and we only beat them by 1. So I hope maybe it's a wake-up call, what happened in the first half of this game. But if this game had gone a little differently, if Ben Sauls misses one kick throughout the course of the game, doesn't put the team on his back, I'm sure I would be sitting here saying, I don't know if this team will be bowl eligible. So that's a kind of a non-answer for you, but I don't know. I think we'll figure out pretty quickly this week how legitimate, which version of last week's team is the real one.
Just 1 week at a time. Just grind it out every week, whatever it takes. I think we just need somebody to be a playmaker on defense. Like, we know what our offense is and what they're capable of when they're clicking. Whether it'll be like that consistently, we'll find out. But I think we can count on that a lot more than we can count on our defense stepping up. So we need to see like 1 or 2 guys to become playmakers. Like, we need 1 cornerback to be solid throughout a game. We need like 1 defensive end to have a big game, get a couple sacks, to put them behind the sticks. That's all we're asking for right now. Just grind them out.
As it goes with the early season, you learn a little bit more each week, but you really don't know shit until the season's pretty much over. So, Pitt won on Saturday. Historic, heroic fashion. Monday rolls around. Pitt victory Monday. Everybody feeling high and mighty. And we wake up to the news that Heather Lyke, the widely regarded, widely respected, and highly awarded athletic director at the University of Pittsburgh, has been notified that her services are no longer needed here. A shock to all of us. Could you guys tell me what your initial reactions were?
We should have seen it coming. Like you said, we were riding so high. We should have expected something to bring us back down to earth. I think I saw a few texts come through on my phone that was like, WTF, like, oh no, what the heck? Weird reactions like that. And I was like, oh God, did somebody get arrested over the weekend of the football team? Like, who suspended? Who got hurt in practice? But no, it was our athletic director not leaving, being relieved of their duties.
Yeah, my first reaction was, what? I was a little caught off guard.
I
Well,
told
Monday.
someone, "Did you hear the news? Heather Lyke's gone." And they said, "Oh, did she get the Northwestern job? Is she leaving for another job?" I'm like, "No, actually, she was fired."
Yeah, I think after the initial shock washes away, your kind of first reaction is like, okay, what happened? What story is about to drop? Like, Panther Lair's about to be buzzing with rumors. What could it possibly be? She's been incredibly successful. She's won all sorts of awards for being a great athletic director. During her time, the football program, the basketball program, both soccer teams and the volleyball team have all improved significantly. She has made some great hires and made some great contract extensions and kept some very good coaches from being swiped by larger, richer programs. So what is the deal here? Why now? What could have happened? But a picture started to emerge pretty quickly. People started to talk immediately.
Are you asking us? Do you want to elaborate on the picture? I feel like you have a good grasp of it.
So yeah, so I was hoping, Dylan, that at this point you'd be like, well, if you watched KDKA at 5:00 today.
Oh yeah, you and I were on the screen for like 8 seconds combined on KDKA.
You and I were on the
5:00 news.
Yeah, because obviously KDK needed to go to an expert on this topic, so they came to us. No, that was a really, really cool opportunity. Shout out to the team at KDKA for having us on. But just to reiterate what we said there, a picture very clearly started to form as soon as this news broke. There had been rumors for years that Heather was very hesitant to embrace the changes within college sports, specifically NIL, and that in general, she was not a great fundraiser and it was not a focus of hers. We know that she initially pushed away Alliance 412, hoping to get all of that money towards the Panther Club and the in-house fundraising efforts. There were, rumors that, well, not even rumors. She was heavily considered for several other jobs across the country, USC, Ohio State, most recently Northwestern. So it was clear that she was positioning for every opening in the Big Ten over the last year. And at a certain point, when your contract is due to expire, as hers was, why would you invest all that time and energy and money in extending someone if they've made it pretty clear that this is not necessarily where they want to be?
Yeah.
And especially when there's more change to the top, there's a new chancellor in town, and the previous chancellors seem to be stride with all the Victory Heights efforts, other things that Heather was working on. They seem to be on the same page. New chancellor in town, maybe not seeing eye to eye on all these projects, priorities. Where should we be spending money? Should we be spending all this money on new fun things? So I think at that point it was just, hey, it ain't going to happen. So might as well just cut the cord.
I have to think Victory Heights was the final nail in the coffin, because a $240 million investment in the Olympic sports in the modern NCAA is basically suicide. And the fact that we have only been able to raise like 12 of the 240 million indicates that she quite literally signed a check that Pitt couldn't cash.
I think when that project was initially announced, I was like, oh, that's a cool thing. That'll be a nice facility for our volleyball and wrestling and swimming teams or whoever else is set to compete there. But as it was going on, it was like, wow, that seems like a lot of money for sports I don't really care about, or most people don't care about. I love the women's volleyball team, so I don't want that to come off as a slight at them. But I also can be realistic and say that if it guaranteed a Pitt or football or men's basketball national championship, that I wouldn't mind if every other sport at the school was cut. And I know a lot of people don't feel that way, and it's going to come off insensitive, but like, let's be real here. We do a show about Pitt sports, and 98% of the time we're talking about football or men's basketball. And that's just the case around most of college athletics. Those are the sports that make money. So investing so heavily into sports that 9 out of 10 of your fans don't give a rat's ass about, it's a little questionable.
Even on that note, I think having good facilities and all this great stuff is important if you're a Power 5 school. Having like a dump where some of your sports teams are playing just kind of shows you aren't that serious about sports. So I'm all for it, but it is unfortunate that we started that project. We got to raise all this money, and then boom, all of a sudden, this other big thing happens where you need a lot of money, name, image, and likeness. So that could not have happened at a worst possible time. If we could rewind like 10 years and do Victor Heights have it wrapped up and say, hey, now this is like our sole focus. We're moving forward. We want to embrace NIL and use our money for getting really good players in the sports that matters. That would be pretty clutch. But no, we had these two kind of like rivaling sources of things that needed a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm all for giving the Olympic sports cooler facilities, especially if it's, multi-purpose, especially if it makes your brand look cooler, but only if you have the money to do it. And it's worth repeating that the knock on her, as much as Pitt fans, and Pitt fans loved her, and I think she did a great job, and we'll give her flowers at the end of this. The one consistent knock on her is that she just hasn't really cared about fundraising, whether NIL or just in general. Like, that is not like, anecdotally, I've heard stories of pretty medium-sized, and by medium-sized donors, I mean people were willing to give tens of thousands of dollars to Pitt, who just couldn't really get the time of day from her at the athletic office. So, I'm all for it, but get us the money. I'm all for it if you can afford it. And again, your number one priority should be the sports that make you money.
Okay. How do we feel moving forward?
I have a little bit of concern. So, the saying goes, one in the hand is worth two in the bush. So it worries me getting rid of like a pretty good athletic director when we don't know what we're going to do next. So obviously this is a gamble by the University of Pittsburgh. And to me, it indicates that they think that they can go out and get someone great, get someone better. It is promising that the chancellor pretty directly indicated that it was the changes in college sports, so reading between the lines, NIL, that drove this decision, because the word on the street was that new chancellor, and what is the new chancellor's name? Someone remind me.
Gable.
That new chancellor Gable is not a fan of prioritizing athletics. So
which is just great, by the way.
Which is awesome, So if you are chasing out an athletic director because they aren't focusing on NIL enough, that gets my hopes up. However, my big, deep fear in all of this is that we are drinking the company Kool-Aid and accepting the word and rumors that the school would would be pushing out and have us believe. The same way I think Heather Lyke has gotten a reputation for pushing her own narratives and stories out, especially to job hop. But I'm going to be really upset to find out that this was all to deprioritize sports and de-emphasize the athletic department as a primary money raiser for the school.
I'm probably in the same boat. I don't think Heather Lyke is irreplaceable. I think we can find an equally, if not better, athletic director to lead Pitt forward. But if you look back at some of the other athletic directors we've had, kind of been boneheads.
Not great.
Yeah.
Morons.
So this is a very important time in Pitt athletics. We can talk about the great coaches we have, potentially looking elsewhere. How do we keep them here? Heather Lyke did a great job at that. Kept Capel here, trusted Capel, retained some other good coaches. Whether you care about those other sports or not, it still happened. The ACC, the entire conference's existence, where does Pitt land in all of this realignment nonsense? Are we going to have a athletic director that is able to foresee the changes coming and keep us alive? Everyone's worst nightmare is, oh, what if we get left out of the Big Four and we're relegated to the Big East? I mean, I don't think that's impossible. I think it's unlikely, but you can't have someone asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, and another just a quick note on that, there were all those stories that came out when do you remember a few years ago there was reports that a few SEC schools were kicking the tires on the Big 10, Big 12 SEC, and it was beyond Clemson and Florida State. Like Virginia and North Carolina had some conversations, NC State had some conversations. The word out of Pitt was that Heather was blindsided by this. I mean, that's just realignment is just another terrible part of modern college football that you have to be up on, and she just wasn't.
I also have something else to point out here. Do we think a different athletic director would make that much of a difference when it comes to NIL? Like, we know we're not the best, but we are who we are. Like, this is what's going to change with the new AD. We're not going to be competing with the big boys, are we? Or am I wrong here?
I don't disagree with you. I also feel like knowing that Heather's background was in compliance, so her whole career basically was fully making sure that things that are currently happening didn't happen to their players, getting payments, boosters, kind of running things. So it could just be like, all right, we need someone who's a little more up to speed on this, but it's also brand new that, yes, Wood, you might be right. There is no real difference that an AD can make. It all comes down to donors' pockets. But I will say that it took probably far too long for us to be seeing collaborations between Alliance 412 and the university when schools like Ole Miss, Tennessee, name other Southern powerful football school that
anyone with oil money.
Yeah, anyone with oil money. It took far too long for there to be official collaborations between the university and Alliance 412, and I think a lot of that can be pointed back to that.
Yeah, that's a fair knock. But I see some stuff on message boards and Twitter, and I feel like they make it seem that Heather Lyke was like, no, we don't want your NIL money. Like, it's no good here. And then the next day you'll be like, oh, yes, I just discovered 12 more billionaires that are willing to give us money here at the university. I don't know how much of a difference that'll make at this point. Like, we're here. I hope we have some awesome new AD who can rile up the fan base and keep us competitive.
Get that guy from Colorado who's trying to get the Saudi money or going to Dubai. What was he doing? The private equity.
Yeah,
That he did fully on his own accord.
Fully on his own accord, flew out to Saudi Arabia to meet with it's like this fund operated by the royal family. And I'm not super hip on finance, but it's basically the money that they use to wash the blood off of Saudi Arabia's hands on a world stage. So
the live golf money.
So live golf. So trying to get the World Cup into Saudi Arabia in a couple decades. So all the sports washing that they've been accused of, that is pretty much my understanding of where that is coming from. So very ethical.
Not even they could keep Shador from getting sacked 5 times on national TV.
Who should our new athletic director be? Wrong answers only.
Well, I've saw a few people throw around Lou Riddick already. I think they're just like, oh, well-known Pitt man who is in the spotlight a good bit and has been a good representation of our university. Yeah, it should be him. Who else have I seen? Doug Whaley was another one.
Yeah,
neither of which.
A case of let's just name every Pitt business person that we know.
I was like, I don't think either of which have had any college administration experience. So
let's get Jonas Salk on the horn.
But Mark Cuban,
Aaron Donald,
Larry Fitzgerald,
Dave Wannstedt. Wasn't there the story that Peterson wouldn't get new carpet for the football facility, so Wannstedt went behind his back and scrounged up the money for it on his own to get it replaced, and he was furious at him.
Probably just installed it himself, just being blue collar
down there, ripping up the floorboards.
Dan
I don't
Marino.
know. Just don't give us another Scott Barnes,
please. No Scott Barnes, and don't use some third-party search. Or wait, no, it was Scott Barnes using the search firm to hire his friend Kevin Stallings that landed us in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, University of Pittsburgh, Chancellor Gable, we are at an inflection point in the history of collegiate sports. NIL, realignment, the players on the verge of we're one court case away from players being employees or just even not affiliated with the university, breaking off and forming their own semi-pro conference of football or whatever. You pushed away a athletic director that unquestionably raised the floor of Pitt Athletics.
Beautiful rebrand, Pitt Athletics.
Who oversaw the greatest rebrand maybe in the history of collegiate sports. Who oversaw so many good things here in the city of Pittsburgh. To take a gamble, and that is what you're doing. You are taking a gamble. The national media is going to ask questions why, the most respected female athletic director in the country who is having great success got pushed away. So none of this looks good. You need to nail this hire. If you do not nail this hire, Pitt is so fucked.
No pressure.
No pressure, but you might just doom us for the rest of the existence of the NCAA if you screw up this hire. So I don't know what you have up your sleeve, but god damn, do I hope this wasn't all for nothing.
Yes, please do not mess it up. We are counting on you. Our happiness, the success of this podcast in future years once again, our happiness and will to live could revolve around this decision. So no pressure. But that's enough administration talk today because it's Brawl Week. Much more important things on the horizon. This Saturday, the 2-0 Pitt Panthers will take on the West Virginia Mountaineers. And we have a preview episode coming for you later this week. So thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to like this video. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, whether that's Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever that may be. Please subscribe. Helps us out. And as always, thank you for listening, and hail, loyal sons of Pittsburgh.